The Pentagon reveals 2,000 U.S. troops currently stationed in Syria, doubling earlier figures.
In terms of the additional numbers, as you know, over the years, that can fluctuate.
Israel strikes Yemen's ports and energy sites and warns of more attacks. And the UN General Assembly seeks ICJ advisory on Israel's humanitarian duties in Gaza. It's 4 p.m. Cairo local time and you're now watching Q News. I'm Hani Saif and we begin today's bulletin with the latest developments in Syria. The Pentagon has stated that it currently has 2,000 U.S. troops in Syria, a significantly higher number than the previously disclosed figure of 900. Pentagon spokesperson Major General Pat Ryder stated that the additional troops are considered temporary forces deployed to support the counter-terrorism mission. Ryder also noted that the previous troop count predated the fall of Syria's Bashar al-Assad.
A small number, or what would normally be considered around.
Syria's new education minister has announced that starting next week, all references to the former ruling Ba'ath Party will be removed from the country's educational system. The minister stated that education is a red line for the Syrian people, more important than food and water. He added that primary schools will remain co-educational, while secondary education will largely remain segregated. Russian President Vladimir Putin has described Israel as the primary beneficiary of Assad's downfall. During an annual press conference, Putin expressed hope that Israel would eventually withdraw its forces, but noted that they are still being built up. The UN has stated that women must be empowered to play a full role in building a new society in Syria and in bringing stability to the shattered nation. Following a visit to Syria, Amy Pope, head of the United Nations Migration Agency, urged the caretaker government to continue empowering and enabling women, as they will be critical to the country's rebuilding. And for more analysis, I'll now hand you over to Selma in our newsroom. Selma.
Thank you so much, Hani. And for further analysis on the current situation in Syria, we're joined by Khalid Dawood, Managing Editor of Al Ahram Weekly. Mr. Khalid, thank you so much for joining us on Q News. And first off, what strategic advantages does Israel gain from the operations in Syria, and how might this shape the future Middle East conflicts?
Well, thank you for having me. First of all, Salma, Israel moved very quickly immediately after the downfall of the Syrian president, and they expanded the area they've been occupying next to the Golan Heights, so-called buffer zone, that was agreed between the two sides after the 1973 war. And again, the Israeli statements, the official statements that originally came out, said that they will likely be there until the end of the winter. And then the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he visited the newly occupied area in Jabal al-Sheikh, and he actually stated that they are going to stay there as a new arrangement has been reached. So this indicates that Israel is there to stay for a long time, basically controlling a very strategic location that overlooks the Syrian capital, Damascus, as well as the border along the between Syria and Lebanon. So, of course, this gives a very important strategic advantage to the Israeli side. That's on the aspect of the aggression and the expansion of their occupation. And on the other side, they also carried out a massive bombing campaign over the past 2 weeks, nearly destroying the vast majority of the heavy weapons that belong to the Syrian army. So again, probably the Israelis now feel victorious they managed to get rid of a regime that was backed by Iran, their arch enemy, and at the same time they managed to weaken Hezbollah and weaken Hamas. So strategically, this is going to have a major effect on how the future of the region is going to be seen, with the rising influence of Turkey and the retreat of the influence of Iran.
Reference to the point you just mentioned, where Benjamin Netanyahu ordered the Israeli troops to stay on Mount Hermon till the end of 2025, after he initially called it a temporary security measure. What are the primary objectives behind this, if you can delve more into this, and how do these goals align with its broader security interests?
Well, you see, the kind of most worrying aspect of the Israeli move is that they keep on expanding the deadline in which they are going to withdraw from the areas they newly occupied after the fall of the Syrian regime. As you know, I mean, already Israel has been occupying the Golan Heights, Syrian Golan Heights, since 1967. So probably there is no indication, not only that the Israeli occupation of Golan will end, but also that this expansion of the Israeli occupation is likely to stay for some time to come, especially after President-elect Trump gets into office just a month from today. Probably, as everybody knows, he was the one who actually recognized the Israeli annexation of the Syrian Golan Heights, and the members of his administration are very much well known to be very biased to the Israeli side. So there's not likely to be much pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu, in case he stays in office, to pull out from the newly occupied areas. And probably even if he agrees to the ceasefire in Gaza, he's going to demand more from the Trump administration in terms of expanding the Israeli control and hegemony over that region. So, of course, again, you know, from a strategic point of view, the Israelis now, they feel they've managed to achieve several major goals they wanted over the past years. It stops with the weakening of Iran, getting rid of the Assad regime that was basically declared enemy for the Israeli government and the Israeli state. And right now, of course, there's going to be a long stage of instability in Syria, and the new kind of group that controls Syria now, and the new leader, Mr. Mohammed Golani, or Ahmad al-Shara, has declared that Syria has no intention to get into any wars with Israel or any other neighboring countries. So basically, that's giving Israel a break from the tense relationship they've had with the Syrian the regime, the previous Syrian regime, as well as the control of those strategic locations in Jabal al-Sheikh, which is known as Mount Hermon.
Mm-hmm. Now, integrating Russia into our conversation, how does Russia's characterization of Israel as the main beneficiary of Assad's potential fall influence the regional power dynamics?
Well, practically speaking, right now we're seeing new strategic players in the region. I mean, of course, as much as the overthrow of the Syrian regime was a major blow to Iran, it was also a major blow to Russia that maintained very strong relations with Syria dating back to the former Soviet Union. So right now, I mean, Russia, there are many reports on intentions even to pull out from the two key military bases they had for many years in Syria, namely the ones overlooking the Mediterranean Sea in Tartus and Ahmimim. These are likely to be removed, except if a new arrangement is reached, but that's unlikely because, again, the United States, and we have the top the State Department official today in Damascus for the first time, is likely to call for the ouster of Russia from their historic bases that they controlled in Syria. So right now we're seeing new players that are in control of the Syrian scenario. On one hand, Turkey, because it was the country that hosted most of the groups that are now in control of Damascus, and Israel on another side. So we're in for some changes that are likely to unfold for the coming years. But again, the key concern is the ability of the new groups controlling Syria to able to run the government and to be able to protect their country, rebuild their army, and basically reach a constitution that's satisfactory to all the Syrian groups and ethnic groups and sects. Those are major challenges that are likely to determine who are the parties, outside parties, that are going to continue to influence the situation inside Syria.
From Cairo, that was Khalid Dawood, managing editor of Al Ahram Weekly. Thank you so much for your insights. And now we're going to move back to Hani for more news and developments around the world.
Thank you, Salma. And Syrian citizens have voiced hope for a better future after the ousting of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. According to current and former Syrian officials speaking to Reuters, the country's dollar reserves have been nearly depleted. This is due to the government's increasing use of these reserves to fund food, fuel, and its ongoing war efforts. Israel has launched strikes against Yemen's ports and energy infrastructure, threatening further attacks. The Israeli attack, involving 14 fighter jets and other aircraft, occurred in 2 waves. The first series of strikes targeted the ports of Salif and Ras Isa, while the second hit the capital, Sana'a. Yemen's Houthis have launched a drone strike against a military target in Tel Aviv. According to a televised statement by their military spokesman, Yahya Sari'a, the drone strike successfully achieved its goal. He vowed that the operations would continue until the aggression against Gaza stops and the siege is lifted. Four Palestinians were killed in an Israeli airstrike this morning, which targeted the Al-Azza neighborhood in Beit Hanun, northern Gaza. Several others were also reported injured in the attack. Local sources also reported that Israeli forces carried out demolition operations targeting residential buildings in Beit Lahia, a town in the northern Gaza Strip. At least 22 Palestinians were killed in Israeli airstrikes on several areas in central Gaza on Thursday evening. 15 people were killed and others wounded when Israeli jets hit the Al-Karama and Shaban al-Rais schools, which were sheltering displaced people in At-Tufah, eastern Gaza City. 3 people died when Israeli warplanes targeted a vehicle in Al-Janina, east of Rafah. Another 3 were killed and several injured in an airstrike on a house near Sultan Bakery in Al-Sabra, south of Gaza City. Additionally, 1 Palestinian was killed and several injured in an airstrike on a group near Al-Ahli Club in the Nusayrat refugee camp, central Gaza. Gaza-based health authorities have confirmed that the Palestinian death toll from the Israeli onslaught since October 7th has risen to over 45,206, with over 107,512 injuries. Israeli occupation forces have arrested a Palestinian man, his wife, and their son early this morning in the village of Rujaib, east of Nablus in the occupied West Bank. According to Palestinian security sources, several Israeli military vehicles stormed the village before soldiers raided a home, conducted a thorough search, and ransacked its contents, causing significant damage. In a separate incident, local sources reported that an Israeli military force also stormed the village of Kafr Khalil, south of Nablus, where they raided another home, searched it, and tampered with its contents. Israeli settlers established a new outpost today along the Al-Marajat Road northwest of Jericho in the occupied West Bank. General Supervisor of the Baydar Organization for the Defense of Bedouin Rights, Hassan Milihat, told Wafa, Palestine's news agency, that the group of settlers also performed provocative dances in the area. Milihat also highlighted the presence of 5 outposts near the Al-Marajat Road, 4 of which were established since October 7th of 2023. The United Nations General Assembly has adopted a resolution calling on the International Court of Justice, the ICJ, to issue an advisory opinion on Israel's humanitarian obligations in Gaza. The resolution, introduced by Norway, passed with 137 votes in favor, while Israel, the US, and 10 other countries opposed it. 22 countries abstained. It calls on the ICJ to assess Israel's duties as the occupying power in Palestinian territories, focusing on facilitating humanitarian aid, including vital relief, development and services, as well as supporting Palestinians' right to self-determination. The resolution also highlights the role of foreign nations and UN agencies such as UNRWA in delivering aid.
Request for an advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice on the obligations of Israel in relation to the presence and activities of
Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas have discussed regional issues and recent developments. The leaders discussed the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Gaza, the escalating violence in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, and Israeli settler crimes against Palestinians. They also focused on joint efforts for an immediate ceasefire, full Israeli withdrawal from Gaza, accelerated humanitarian aid, and the implementation of the ICJ's ruling. The meeting also addressed the call for an international peace conference and continued efforts towards Palestine's full UN membership. Human Rights Watch has stated that Israel's policy of deprivation, which has caused thousands of deaths from dehydration and disease, constitutes a crime against humanity and an act of genocide. In a report released, Human Rights Watch stated that Israeli authorities cut off and later restricted piped water to Gaza, rendered most of its water and sanitation infrastructure useless by cutting electricity and restricting fuel, deliberately damaged water facilities and repair materials, and blocked the entry of critical water supplies. Israeli settlers have set fire to a mosque in the village of Marda, located in the occupied West Bank province of Salfit. They also sprayed painted racist slogans on its walls. Local residents managed to control the blaze before it spread throughout the mosque, limiting the damage to the entrance. No injuries were reported in the attack.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين. وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
The Lebanese army has announced in a statement that its units are continuing operations to clear roads, remove debris, conduct engineering surveys, and safely detonate unexploded ordnance. The army also urged citizens to avoid approaching areas where its units are operating and to report suspicious objects to assist with the ongoing mission. These efforts aim to clear the way for residents to return to their homes once conditions are safe. The Israeli occupation army has renewed warnings to residents of more than 60 villages in southern Lebanon, cautioning them against returning to their homes. According to the Lebanese national news agency, Israeli occupation forces withdrew from the town of Bani Hayyan in the south after demolishing and destroying homes. In a separate incident, occupation forces carried out a large-scale demolition operation in the town of Kafr. Meanwhile, Israeli drones filled the skies over Tyre, intensifying tensions in the area. Egyptair has announced that it resumed direct flights between Cairo and Beirut as of Thursday, citing the stabilization of conditions in the brotherly state of Lebanon. Egyptair resumed its flights after a 3-month suspension. In September, international and regional airlines, including Egyptair, suspended flights to Lebanon as Israel intensified its military operations in the country. Russia has launched a series of missile attacks against Kiev, reportedly killing 1 person, injuring 11, and causing damage across the city. Multiple explosions were reported in Kiev around 7 a.m. local time. Kiev Mayor Vitaly Klitschko confirmed the air defenses were active over the city. The Air Force stated that Russia attacked the capital with 5 ballistic missiles, either of the Iskander-M or North Korean KN-23 model. The President of the European Council, Antonio Costa, stated that the European Union will provide an additional 30 billion euros of financial support to Ukraine in 2025. Costa added that the European Union has already provided about 130 billion euros in financial support to Ukraine since the beginning of the war in 2022.
Shadow fleet. Second, we have already delivered.
European Union leaders have met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to discuss the situation in the country and the prospect of negotiations with Russia as war continues. European Union leaders insisted that no decisions can be taken about the future of Ukraine without its consent or behind the backs of its partners in Europe, barely a month before U.S. President-elect Donald Trump takes office. Ukrainian forces have struck a Novoshakhtinsk petroleum plant in Russia's Rostov region overnight. According to a statement by Ukraine's Army General Staff, the Novoshakhtinsk plant was the only operating oil refinery in Rostov region, used to supply Russia's armed forces. Ukraine's General Staff claimed it damaged the catalytic cracking unit of the plant used for petroleum conversion. These are all the news we have for now, but here's a reminder of today's top stories. The Pentagon reveals 2,000 U.S. troops currently stationed in Syria, doubling earlier figures. Israel strikes Yemen's ports and energy sites and warns of more attacks. And the UN General Assembly seeks the ICJ's advisory on Israel's humanitarian duties in Gaza. This concludes our news bulletin for this hour, but please don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok at QNewsEGY to stay informed. I'm Henny Saif. Thank you for watching.